Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sam's Healing Podcast. You obviously know me as Sam, and I'm joined by a regular visitor who has become the new fan favorite. We've had a lot of therapists, psychotherapists, and some pretty brilliant people in, but I'll tell you, I get a lot of people going, Max is the man. The dude is just helping me. I know you're starting your book tour soon. I know The View is calling. I know Oprah wants to have you on soon. So all joking aside, you're walking through a lot. How are you doing?
Oh, I am walking through a lot. I have some answers for folks in my shoes that perhaps are helpful. That certainly does not mean I'm out of the woods here, dude. This is still an everyday journey for me, just as it is for anyone else watching this. And to the extent that anything I've had to say about that experience has helped folks, I am eternally grateful for the opportunity to bring to their lives what I so desperately needed in mine, especially in the aftermath of D-Day.
Well, I can tell you, you can see some of the comments that are out there and some of the email. A lot of people don't see the email I get of people just really loving what we're doing, but loving your heart. And a lot of betrayed females are really enjoying the conversation because there's so many parallels.
Oh, so, absolutely. You just switch the pronoun and it applies, right? I mean, it really is that simple.
Well, and it's really something that I think survivors of betrayal trauma know when they hear someone who is being authentic, who hasn't just read a bunch of books or done a couple of trainings, but has actually been in the foxhole and had to really walk through massive amounts of agony and pain and trauma. Yeah. And I don't think trauma really does enough description for the life-altering, raw pain that
Oblivion might work.
Walk through. Sorry.
I said Oblivion might work. Yeah.
Oblivion, Armageddon.
Yeah. I mean, there we go.
We could do that for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that we're going to talk about today that I know resonates with betrayed male and female, and it's one of the most difficult things early on in recovery, but for many, it stays with them for a long period of time. I deal with people who years down the road are still struggling with this. And the question is, Max, for you, how did you stop comparing yourself to the affair partner? And in your case, we actually, sadly, but with great confidence to be able to address it, we have to say partners. How did you stop comparing yourself with them?
Okay, this is such an important question, hugely important question, the answer to which I know that any betrayed spouse watching this desperately wants an answer to. And I only have the power to provide you with the answer that helped me the most in this question. And that answer was that the affair scenario, okay, is in no way reflective of reality. It is a total fantasy that is by design detached from reality because it is an escape from reality. Therefore, what you're comparing yourself to, it's not an apples to oranges comparison. It's an apples to unicorns comparison. That's how different these two experiences are. The affair itself, think about affair sex, right? It's heroin, it's illicit, it's impermissible, it's clandestine, it's sneaky, it's vaguely unsafe. You have none of those conditions with your partner, nor could you ever. With your partner, you have longevity, you have familiarity, you have safety, you have reality. Okay,
you have kids, you have mortgages, you have bill payments, you have PMS,
exactly,
right?
Sam. Thank you. Exactly. Reality, meaning You've got kids. You're making school lunches in the morning. You're doing homework with them at night. You're getting showers done. You're loading the dishwasher in a way that might piss your partner off, but damn it, that's how you know how to do it, right? All of these elements, the $900 set of tires your car suddenly needs, and now you and your spouse have to get together and agonize over how to find that room in the tight family budget. Your spouse has to do none of that with his or her affair partner. None of that water under the bridge exists with their affair partner. None of it. And to compound that, Sam, as you know, baked into the design of the illicit affair is a tendency that the two participants have to see each other as infallible. They're looking past one another's flaws, right? Everything they do and say is just wonderful and beautiful. It's a Disney fantasy. It is a fairy tale. And so to go back to the original question in this context now, what are you comparing yourself to? When I went to that weekend summit last year, they gave me, as you know, Sam, this big, thick booklet. There was a sentence in there that stunned me on this very point, which was about comparing or competing with your spouse's affair and affair partner. And it simply, bluntly said, very succinctly, you don't try to compare yourself or compete with your spouse's affair. You can't, period, full stop. And I thought, that's it? You're just going to tell me I can't? And like, no explanation. But because there's nothing further to say. It is the terrain on which that affair played out is totally unreal. It is made up, and inevitably reality will intrude on that relationship, especially if these two end up going off together and leaving you. And if that is your situation, my heart breaks for you. The pain of that is beyond my capacity to describe. I am so deeply sorry. I mean that from the depths of my being. How much pain you're in is almost impossible to describe. But know this, if that is your situation, guess what? Nobody can run from the bills forever. No one can run from reality forever. No one is infallible, nor can this illusion of seeing one another as infallible be sustained for any prolonged period of time. So inevitably, the lesson that will be learned is, as I've said on previous episodes with you, Sam, there is no magic person coming to save us from ourselves. There is no magic person coming to save us from a marriage that perhaps is on the rocks or has had its challenges that continue to reverberate and continue to be sources of struggle between the two of you. There's no magic here. There's only work. And either you're going to do the work together to make this, give this relationship some hope going forward, or if that's not the case for me, then you do the work on yourself. Either way, the only way out of this is work. Last thing I'll say on this to Sam, and I love this point, and I know it's one you've done videos on. Time alone isn't going to help. Time alone isn't going to heal anything. Time alone isn't going to save you. It's the work you put in during that time. It's the work you do over a sustained period of time that will create the healing, which gets to one of the other topics that I know we're going to discuss today.
And I think, what's interesting is there is a point where affair sex with that person is not enough, and we will replace that affair partner with another one, right? Because and I really want to talk about this because you're not a therapist, you're not a coach, you're living this, because there was a point in your foxhole where we had to talk often about the fact that, well, the cheating spouse has to go find another source of heroin because this heroin has become a little bit dull, right? I need another option of heroin or another drug because this has gotten kind of predictable. Is that what you saw in your situation?
This is exactly why, and this is another really powerful point you're making, Sam. It is hugely important. This is another reason why comparing yourself to the affair partner, or blaming yourself for what your spouse has done to you through acting out is fundamentally irrational. Okay, because what we're talking about in a situation like this is your spouse almost certainly acted out because of a brokenness that is inside him or her. They are attempting to resolve a problem that exists within her through something that is external to her or him, an external validation, a source of supply, whatever it might be. But as I was just saying, the only thing that's going to fix or heal is the work that you do on yourself. And when you're acting out as a means of resolving whatever brokenness exists inside of you, there is no way that is ever going to be the resolution. And therefore, yes, Sam, you have to keep going out and seeking more and more of that dopamine hit to escape the problems festering within, in lieu of actually solving them, because solving them is hard. Healing from infidelity is hard. I am never going to sugarcoat that for anyone watching these videos. The only way to get through it is through it, and the only way through it is to do some really hard work and face yourself in ways deeper than you've ever had to face yourself before. So yeah, you're darn right. In my situation, that was exactly the case. I know of at least 3 affair partners that my spouse had over the span of maybe six months or so. Okay, and why was that happening? Well, listen, I don't want to bore folks who are watching this video with the details, but just suffice it to say that my spouse was going through some significant personal challenges at the time that these affairs blew up. I didn't make these connections until during and after D-Day. But that was the case, and she was seeking to resolve those anxieties and those dilemmas through external validation, through external sources of supply. That's never going to be the answer, and therefore, yes, there's never going to be enough of that supply, because it's the wrong direction to go in to heal issues that fundamentally only can be healed by work on yourself.
And I know that at some level, listeners listen to you. You're a writer, you're an author, very successful. You can very eloquently describe the pain, but it's not because you're a salesman. It's not because you are someone that's just like, oh, it was this and this. I mean, we spend hours talking through pain, tears, agony, sadness. I know everybody can relate to this. But we didn't talk about this beforehand. But what was it like to find self-compassion for you?
Oh, God, this is so important.
Because it took work to get you there. Most of us are not wired with a default program that says self-compassion. We are wired with a default program, most of us, of self-criticism, unrelenting self-criticism. What was it like to kind of finally get to a point where you were able to just be compassionate on yourself?
You have masterfully transitioned to another topic that I hoped we would address today. Thank you, Sam, which is this. What you just said to me pertains powerfully to the problem of rumination that results from discovery of your spouse's affair. And the challenge of addressing rumination and its effects on my life, which can be paralyzing, which can distract you at work and when you're in the presence of your kids, unable to be fully present in any scenario with your children, at your job, elsewhere, even out with your buddies. Okay. And here's how self-compassion provided the means by which I was able to start to conquer my tendency toward rumination. It was by asking myself a couple, at least, of simple questions. Let's say I'm ruminating about my spouse being in sexual situations with her affair partner. Any man watching this knows those ruminations very well, because every one of you has done this. Don't lie. Yep. Okay. And I do suspect that this is a topic from which female betrayals also can draw plenty of resonance, which is, as I'm having these visuals play out in my mind, which for reasons we've discussed previously were very easy to create in my mind, I got to a point where I asked myself, How are these thoughts helping you heal, Max? Is this thought, this visual you're creating in your mind and ruminating over, is that thought an act of self-love? You were just talking about self-compassion. Exactly. And then I got to ask myself some deeper questions. And this is how I started to actually clarify for myself what it means to say that pain that is not transformed is transmitted. Well, that's great, but how does one transform one's pain? Well, this is one way I did it, is when I was facing the fact that no, it is not an act of self-love to go out of my way to create these visuals in my mind that ripped me to pieces. Visuals of my spouse in sexual situations with her affair partner. What I had to do in those moments was then ask, why is it that I am indulging ruminations that clearly are not acts of self-love? Why am I doing that to myself? Do I believe that I deserve love? Do I believe that I deserve to love myself? Do I believe that I deserve self-soothing? Do I believe that I deserve self-compassion, as you put it, Sam? And guess what? I discovered that the answers to those questions, maybe this will shock some folks, or maybe this is something that many folks consciously or not struggle with, was no. I learned through these ruminations that nope, I did not believe myself deserving of those things. I had spent very little, if any, time affording myself those things, loving myself, soothing myself, comforting myself. And I had to learn what that even meant. How does one even do that? And this is where if people like yourself, Sam, came in such hugely important ways, is once I faced the fact that essentially I don't want to put it, so bluntly, but in my situation, this is how I thought about it, and it did help. I was doing this to myself. I have the choice. I am the governor of my mind. Yeah. My mind is not the governor of me, and that's how it's going to be. And I'm going to be the adult in the room of the self here. I'm not going to let my inner child take over my brain and that primitive part of the brain that's flashing all these alarms about the potential harm and perils in front of me that goes way back to when we were not at the top of the food chain, right? Once you become aware of these things, then you can bring an intentionality to your situation, a deliberateness, a consciousness. That's the kind of deliberate, intentional work that creates your healing. Time alone isn't going to do it. When you're having these ruminating thoughts that are hurting you, you have to bring some intentional thought to that situation. Say, am I loving myself right now by doing this? If not, then why am I doing this? And honestly, Sam, did that like a light switch immediately help me stop ruminating? No. But did it over time become a valuable practice of mine? 100%.
And I think in many ways, this goes back to some real family of origin work that we had to do, because you had to do some real deep diving into why am I so self-critical, right? Yeah. Why am I looking at myself with this critical, undermining approach that I should be this, I should be that, I'm supposed to be this, right?
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, the work I did with you, the work I've done reading books like No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, or Growing Yourself Back Up, the author of that book you interviewed, Sam, and I encourage people to go back and find that because it's great, and that guy is amazing. Books like that helped me realize that thought process, it goes much, much further back than when I met my spouse. It had nothing to do with her. She was not the origin of those traumas. She was a trigger for them. Those traumas predated her role in my life by decades. Okay. Right. And so, Sam, this is how, again, this goes back to transforming your pain. You transform your pain by peeling back the layers of yourself and really bringing some fearless curiosity to what those layers reveal to you. And one of the things that revealed to me, Sam, were things like how I was projecting rejection from my mother onto my spouse. Well, that has nothing to do with my spouse. That's incumbent upon me to unpack and understand, and then arrive at the empowering thought that no matter what happened in my background, I am responsible for my response to those events. And
Yeah.
that's empowering because I get to decide how I grow from those things. That's the kind of empowering thought that can arise from this kind of honest work that the infidelity situation calls upon you to do.
And it's masterful the way that you are lining up these action items that you took. So did you ever feel tempted to regress into feeling like a victim?
Oh, absolutely. And this gets to another thing I was hoping to talk about today. So I'm glad you bring this up. One of the things I had to do here to avoid that kind of self-victimization that you just described was to accept reality. This happened to you. It sucks. It's unjust. It's
Right.
not fair. Okay. It happened though. And accepting it is critical to growing from it and moving through it. And yes, did I feel tempted? I did it. I know there were moments when I would throw myself pity parties. Anyone in this situation is going to have those moments. The trick is to not stay there. Allow that, lean into those thoughts, but again, bring enough curiosity to them to try and understand them and unpack them. And that again is the empowerment portion of this whole journey that you're embroiled in right now if you're watching this. Your response to this dynamic cannot end at victimizing yourself. It's human to feel that way.
I'm sure some people are like, it's too good to be true. It's too good. Mm-hmm. It feels too perfect. Was there a point? I know there was. Sidebar. I know there was. But talk about the points that you felt where you were like, F this and Easily. F Sam and F her and F everybody. Because didn't you feel that at one point?
Oh, I did. I mean, you saw me easily at my worst moments when we were working together, Sam. I did feel that way. There was a moment that comes to mind for me. You talk about self-victimization. When I had decided that I was to blame for all of it. This was all my fault. Every mistake I made in my marriage, or at least perceived mistake, I reviewed all of them, ruminated over all of them. And each one became the reason this happened to me. Okay. You saw me. I remember there was one moment when we had a session while I was sitting in my car. I had driven to the water to watch the sunrise over the water and hoping that the serenity and beauty of that scene would pull me out of myself. But man, I got on that Zoom with you and I was a blithering mess and I screwed it all up. This was all my fault. There was a lot. You mentioned the word regress and regression. There was a lot of regressiveness to those thoughts that I was having that morning. Did I realize that in the moment? No. Did I realize that even the next day? No. How long has it taken me to realize that how much irrationality there was and how much aggressiveness there was to that thought process? It's taken a couple of years, folks. And are there still times when I feel that self-victimizing mindset pull and tug at me? Yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's absolutely true, Sam. And did I feel anger? F her and F Sam, and absolutely. There were moments when my initial response to things that I now understand to have been true morsels of wisdom that have helped me pull myself out from under this mudslide. When I was so cynically and bitterly suspicious of these things that I would say, you know what, this is all BS, and they're just trying to make people feel better. This isn't true. But the more I pushed through this, the more I read, the more I worked with folks like yourself, the more thousands of hours of videos I consumed, the more I realized, you know what, you got a choice here, buddy. You can be angry. And you can pound your chest at all of these therapists and books and videos and decide that anger is going to be your response to this. But what a miserable existence would that be? How much would you be depriving yourself of the opportunity to have a life beyond this? Last thing I'll say on this, Sam, is I love the idea that whether you're going to move on together with your unfaithful spouse or go it alone, the opportunity to thrive beyond this, I now realize is absolutely there. And you're depriving yourself of that opportunity by deciding that anger, resentment, bitterness, and regression are going to be your final responses to this situation. It doesn't have to be that way. As I said earlier, we get to determine how we respond to the circumstances of our lives, no matter how harrowing they are.
And I love the raw passion, and I love the bravery that you display, because it's easy to sit here. The day is April 9th of 2025, filming day. Yeah. It wasn't too long ago that I sat here, you sat in your car going through massive, what felt like insurmountable agony that was never going to go away. And being able to sit, and I love the idea of you and I sitting together now, just talking vulnerably about what it's like to go through what is probably the darkest chapter of your life and so many other people. We get to walk with them through, and it is an honor of mine to get to work with people who are going through quite possibly the darkest season of their entire life.
Yeah.
So if you were to have a moment with hundreds of other men and other women sitting in their car, and they don't have a session scheduled today, but they drove to the beach. Look at life turning the tables. You now have a voice to hundreds. Yeah. I wish I could say hundreds and thousands of people, but we're not there yet, but that's okay. So if you were to have a voice to another Max or a Maxine sitting in their car having a moment like you had, as we end today, what would you share with him or her?
You know, it's interesting. A couple things immediately occur to me as you say that. Firstly is that it's okay. It's okay to sit there in ruins, because you're only a human being. Something has happened to you that you did not invite into your life, that was no fault of your own, whether you believe it or not. Okay. And feel that. Go ahead and feel it. Don't try to stuff it down, because it'll come back at you harder next time. Okay. Live through these waves of grief. And I call them waves of grief because my experience was that the healing journey is a very uneven one, wherein these waves of dark, bleak, black grief would wash over me, and I would just be practically convulsing with just torment. And then they would pass, and then I would have this moment in between these when I was like, oh, maybe I'm okay for a moment, and then the next wave of the tsunami of darkness would come at me out of nowhere, and all that healing that I thought I had done just felt like it got wiped away by the natural disaster of all of these emotions. So you've got to expect that this is going to be an inconsistent, unstable, uneven road back to yourself. And it's going to involve those moments when you, as I was, you mentioned the date, April 9th, 2025. And I think, where was I April 9th, 2023? I was, let me think about this, 2 months from D-Day, after D-Day. I had D-Day about 60 days prior to that. I was an absolute basket case at that point, crying at times just randomly out of nowhere, unable to think, unable to focus at work, unable to be present with my kids. And I will use this word because it's true to my experience in these moments. And I'll leave you with this. Resentment about the fact that a gesture that I once had taken so for granted that I'd even think about it, which is reaching across the bed to my spouse and just pulling her body closer to mine, a cuddle with your wife at night. The simple gesture became so fraught with complexity that I did resent it, because I feared after D-Day that merely by reaching across the bed and pulling the body close of this person that I had been married to for 14 years was to tell her that what she did to me was okay. These thoughts never would have occurred to me before D-Day, and didn't. And I resented the fact that now they did. So guess what? I will say this. There's no thought you're having right now. If you are listening to this, as I did sometimes, alone in your car and feeling like you are absolutely alone, more alone than you've ever been in your life, because I felt that way too. Listen, there is no thought you're having in that moment that I don't know. You're hearing right now from someone who has walked every inch of the journey that you're taking right now. It's not going to be a linear path out of this, man. It's going to be uneven. It's going to be a roller coaster. There are going to be peaks and valleys, and that's normal. I think that's the thing I'd most want to impress upon people who are in that situation right now, Sam. Everything they're experiencing is normal. The highs, the lows, and everything in between, and they've got to keep living with it, warts and all, pain and all, in order to find their way through it. There's no other way.
I think you're exactly right. And on behalf of Max and myself, we see you. Particularly, we see you, the betrayed male, because it's just a unique journey that my hope in bringing Max in, Jonathan, I have another gentleman that's coming in very soon. I have another one that's coming in. We want you to know, betrayed male and female, we see you. And we care for you, and we're reaching out for you because you are worthy of being reached out to. And oh, by the way, you unfaithful, you are just as worthy of being reached out to. You have the opportunity to heal. We don't know about your relationship, but we sure as hell know about you. And regardless of how despicable, unworthy, and awful you feel about yourself, you are not without the ability to be restored and to find new life and to find new hope and to find new purpose even. And so if Max can help, you can leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening. YouTube's probably the easiest. You can reach out to me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. Max, as always, I love you to death like a brother. You're like family. Thank you for coming in. And until next time, we will see you all on Sam's Healing Podcast.